Hey, what's up, guys? It's MyGamesGX here, and we are finally going to be doing a deck profile on my Mitsurugi RYZEAL list. Just recently went like basically 20-0 on Dueling Book with this. It's a really good deck, and I think people underestimate it. People say it's kind of more high rolly, but I think this deck just has so much more gas that the other versions don't, and the ability to play with just its engine is like unmatched. Like Murakamo is a strip custom card, so I wanted to go over my final deck list and show you guys what I've been on with some goo that maybe you haven't seen otherwise. Hi, Future Chris here. I did want to explain some of these Mitsurugi cards too, so that you guys get a good sense of the deck before we actually get into it. So basically, this is what all the Mitsurugi cards. You have two level 4 monsters. One is a extender and the other one is basically a recurrence. Kusanagi can fish back any Mitsurugi spell or trap card or card that's banished or in the graveyard, so it's how you can constantly recur like your one-ofs, or if things get bestialed like your Murakamo. But Kusanagi is very often just set off of the Mitsurugi ritual, so you can immediately recur it back so you can use it again. So let's talk about that. We do have Mitsurugi Ritual, which has 2 effects that you can use once per turn each. So you can summon a Mitsurugi Ritual from your hand by using materials from your field, hand, or deck, essentially. So it's kind of like branded fusion. So you could send two monsters from your deck to summon out the Murakama from hand. It's typically Saji and Kusanagi, and then you can immediately basically recur the ritual, and then you can use it again to summon out the Futsu, because you can summon it from deck by tributing your Murakamo. And now Murakamo and Futsu, they're basically your boss monsters. Murakamo is the most important one by far. It's a hand rip on once per turn. If your opponent activates a card or effect, essentially you can quick effect chain this to the effect, and then your opponent has to discard a card from their hand or the effect goes through, which is very powerful. So essentially, like, let's just say you have a RYZEAL duo driver, you can establish the Murakamo before the duo driver, and then if your opponent ends up hand trapping the duo drive, they have to discard a card to resolve their imperm or effect veiler, so they go -2 just to do that, which makes this very devastating. Also, when it's tributed, it gets to special summon itself and also search any Mitsurugi monster, and then when it's special summon, it gets to blow up the board. So this is a Raigeki basically on either turn, so it's a nice board breaker. This is also a great interruption, because you have the quick play, which is basically a Sangen Kaiman. For the deck, you get to add 1 Mitsurugi from your deck to your hand, and then you can also pay 800 to do an additional effect to then special summon 1 Mitsurugi monster from your hand or graveyard. It cannot attack directly, but that's totally fine. You can even use this for OTKs very nicely, which is kind of cool. But the play here is usually to like go normal summon Saji, and then they go imperm chain prayer so that you dodge the imperm, and then you get to special summon out like a Kusanagi that you search out. So, and then you still get the Saji effect, or you could just immediately revive the Saji, again, to get the free body. But prayers is also nice to combine with the rituals to tribute them and then revive, and then you can use that for OTK. Futsu is also basically the same, where if it's tributed, you get to search out one and special summon itself. But also when it's on field once per chain, when your opponent special summons a monster by any means, you could just target 1 reptile in your graveyard and special summon it. You can use this up to until unlimited times per turn, but this is typically just used to get back a Kusanagi and Saji that are chilling in your graveyard to get more recurrence. And then also you can special summon out a King of the Pharaoh Imps, which is your main extender with this deck, since you do have 2 level 4s that can search any of your rituals. And then you can Saji and Kusanagi also have hidden effects, where when they're on the field, they can tribute themselves to prevent destruction of your other Mitsurugi monsters. So then they can also trigger their effects off of that, and also provide really nice just protection from board breakers on them. And then also you have an in-engine Omni Negate in the form of Mitsurugi Great Purification that you can search out. We run 1 Mitsurugi Futsu, 1 Mitsurugi Murakamo. So we're also running the 2 Saji and 1 Kusanagi. The reason why we're only running 1 Murakamo is that 2 can be a bit of a brick. I really do like the card. It's nice to open up a ritual plus Murakamo. I think you end up winning the game in more of those scenarios, but I think it's just much more prone to bricking at that point, especially since you are running cards like Kusanagi and Futsu already, which are pretty hard bricks. The Saji at 2 makes sense to me. I think I really do like the Kusanagi. I've seen builds actually start cutting Kusanagi, and I've tested cutting Kusanagi. I think it's fine to cut Kusanagi, but I think what you end up missing out on is your best Molcharmi play, because you aren't going to be able to get to Purification, which is one of the best reasons I think to run this deck, is because you have a really good, or this engine, because you have a really good Molcharmi line, which Ben Tamara kind of showed off from getting second place at our YCS. And essentially what you do is, if you get Molcharmied, you can do your, and you have Mitsurugi combo, you can basically make a Murakamo summon from hand, and then you can summon from, you can tribute the Futsu from deck, and then you can search out the Omni Negate so that you can give them about 0 draws, or maybe just the 1 draw that you needed to get to the King of the Feral Imps. So, and then you get Omni Negate plus a hand rip for theoretically 2 plus a board wipe. So that's really good in my opinion under Molcharmi, so Fuwalos in particular. So that's why I do want to run the Purification. It makes your going first way better in my opinion as well. Being able to like end on something very substantial with the Mitsurugi stuff. So that's why I think at the end of the day, it's still really worth it to run the 2 bricks. I think Kusanagi is one of the hardest bricks in the whole deck, and if I draw this, I'm very upset. I also think Purification's fine going second, because you can pitch it off of Ice or Node, Ryzeal, and then you're able to use this going second as a board breaker to OTK. I've done that a couple times with this deck. I also think it's correct to run 3 Ritual, because like I said, you just want open Ritual so that you only have to go into King of the Feral Imps once, and then you can loop your 1. So yeah, overall, I think it's incorrect to not run the Kusanagi. I've seen lists do well with it, but I think it really just kills your grind game. It makes your engine almost just kind of not that good, in my opinion. Your Futsu gets a lot worse when you can't just end on the Murakamo board with Futsu and then just recur ability and then spamming the board with bodies. I think you kind of do need the Kusanagi. All right, so let's get into the Ryzeal stuff. Really standard 3 Ice Ryzeal. Shout out to finally getting my QCRs. 3X Ryzeals. This is like the best 1-card combo in the deck. You can also 1-card combo with Ice, but you have to do it it loses to every hand trap essentially, so you don't typically want a 1-card combo with Ice. You typically want to start with X. I'll show you guys the really nice anti-nib line too at the end. And then 2 Sword Ryzeals. I've been on 2 to 3, debated on 2 and 3. I would like to go to 3, but then I would have to go to 44, and that's just not what I want to do. Then 1 Node. I feel like this is just the perfect ratio, and don't roast me on my rare Node. We're getting a super rare in the mail. But yeah, no, I think that this is what you want to run. I still think even though Ice is your worst 1-card combo, it's still like way better than Saji draw. That's why I almost want to go to 1 Saji, but I think you need the 2. But 3 Ice is still really good, because if you have any other extender, you're basically chilling. So I think it's really good to just run these ratios. Like, you need 2 Ice as well. You need 2 Sword if you want to do the 1-card Ice a lot of the time. So that's why I'm running those. And overall, just having Engine with this deck is what you want to see. So, and then for the last Ryzeal card, we are running one Ryzeal Cross, no plugin and no trap. I've actually debated on running the trap just for Chaos Angel, but we have something in the side deck for that. And then 3 Bonfire too. This is just like more Ryzeal engine. This is one of your best 1-card starters. I love starting this even like through Droll, because I'll search the Ice if I lose to Droll. Or I'll search the X if I already have access to Ice. If they Droll me, that's fine. If they Ash me, that's typically fine. This is typically what they're going to Ash you on, honestly. I've been seeing a lot of people. And that was the engine of the deck, and now we're going to go into the non-engine. So we have about 17 non-engine, I believe. It's 3 Droll and Lockbird. I think Droll and Lockbird's like the best, one of the best hand traps right now. It is one of the biggest hard stops to Fiendsmith. If they go track, you chain Droll, you win the game. Or at least you turn skip them. This is very good against Blue Eyes as well. It basically kneecaps their board and doesn't allow them to do a whole lot. It's just one of the best cards. It's also great into Mitsu, so it's just great into all the decks except for Maliss, and I think a lot of people are playing Blue Eyes over Maliss right now, so I think that's just fine. Droll belongs in the main deck, and we're choosing to run that over the Nibiru. I don't know. I'm going back and forth. We are not running Nibiru, but we'll get into that. 1 Bestial Magma, 1 Druid Swarm. This is something I'm actually debating. It's either this or 2 Nib, essentially, but I'm currently running the Druid Swarm plus Magnum up because we are running the Chaos Angel in the side deck. I think it's actually really good to have these. They're just like some of the most powerful hand traps in the whole game right now, so I think not running them is kind of like a disservice to your deck. Durastorm being great removal, and Magnamut just giving you a body is crazy in this deck, so you can also go into Haggard to clear your board, but it's also just great against every deck, including Blue Eyes. Sniping the Maiden out of the graveyard is crazy. Sniping the Mitsurugi Murakamo out of the graveyard is crazy, and sniping any of the Fiendsmith cards are crazy out of the graveyard. This card's... Then even against Pure and Malice, there are plenty of things that you want to Bestial against them. Even Malice, because they will always like need to go to Splash Mage or Haggard if you hand trap them, and if you get whatever you're gonna Bestial, it's like just fine usually, especially when they are probably putting them into the graveyard after they've used their banish effects, all the Malice girls. So yeah. 3 Ash. I think Ash is the best hand trap in the game right now, honestly, because it's great top deck, so you can get around Mulcharmy. No, sorry, it's a great top deck into things like Malice and other decks. Also, it's great as just a card to get around Mulcharmy going first. And it's just great going second. So yeah, it's just you have to run it at 3, and then 3 Fuwalos. I think this. Yeah, we're just running the best hand traps right now. So yeah, and then 3 Imperm. So yeah, that rounds off the hand traps. I do think Imperm is just... These cards are great top decks. Fuwalos isn't the best top deck, and this isn't the best top deck, but I think they're just so powerful, and they turn skip your opponent, and if you only draw 1 hand trap, and it's like one of these, you're like just fine, and that's like what I'm trying to make out of these hand traps. They're either great top decks, or like if I only draw 1 hand trap, it's totally fine, so... Because this deck does have an issue with only drawing 1 hand trap sometimes, because you can't main as much non-engine. Like, we only have about 16, 17, 18. If you include, like, the 2 talents right here, which I do really like. I think 3 can get bricky a bit, especially with, like, Imperm in the game. So I'm running 2. I just don't want to ever draw double talents, or, like, talents, off a draw. But the hand rip portion just auto wins games, and this is one of the most non-game cards in the game. That's why we're also running the Fuwalos. Same with Droll. It's just these cards create non-games, essentially. This card can just win the game from resolving. Same with Fuwalos. And then 1 Paw of Prosperity and 1 Called By just for the generic cards. This can grab a talents and then also just grab a card. It's just a great card. And then Called By just to play around Fuwalos, and it's just honestly a great top deck into certain decks. So yeah, that was the main deck. Let's get into the extra deck quickly. We are running 2 Detonator, 2 Duo Drive. I would like the double Duo Drive. We'll show you an anti-nib line that Tamaric was doing. I really do love this anti-nib line because you end up sending a Duo Drive off of Ext, and it's great. 2 Eclipse Twins. I see a lot of people not using this card as effectively as you can, but this is the best boss monster in this deck, honestly, in past turn 3. You just keep making Eclipse Twins with your bodies in a grind game against like in the Mitsu mirror match, and you just sit on the twins, and then you can just keep looping your Abyss Dweller, or you could keep looping your Exciton Knight or like Feral Imps if you really need to. So that's why I think Eclipse Twins, you have to run at 2, even though you always send one off of Ext most likely, depending on the situation. But then also, since I'm doing the Duo Drive line, you're typically just sitting on 2, so you could potentially just like cut 1. But I do just think this card it's like infinite recursion. That's why I don't feel like I need to run Daigusto Emerald in this deck, because I can keep recurring my rank 4s with Eclipse Twins as long as I have bodies to make it with. So that's just definitely good. And then 1 King. I think you only need 1 King. I never go into 2, and I just loop it. And with my kind of build, like, I'm already like opening Ritual most of the time, so I don't need to loop it. And then 1 Exciton, and then 1 Abyss Dweller. I think Exciton's really crazy in this version. But it kind of sucks that we can't link it off, I won't lie, unless you go into the Ice line. And then Abyss Dweller, we just like end on this essentially, and you need it also for the Metaltronus. And then 1 Typhon. This is good for if you only open 1 hand trap, so that's why we're running it. Going second, like if you only open 1 hand trap, and let's just say it's Fuwalos, and you can half board them, if it's like a nib, or if you only open 1 hand trap, like an Ash or an Imperm, you can usually use this plus like an Imperm to kind of crack their board, and then also establish some advantage. And then 1 Castel, 1 Dugaris for the rest of the rank 4s. Castel's really nice. This is something that I noticed after YCS. After YCS Orlando, this is how you out the Eclipse Twins if you already have your Dweller in the graveyard and you can't establish really that much advantage, because there's also a fact that you just can't go Eclipse Twins if you're behind. So you have to be able to make the Castel to be able to spin back the Eclipse Twins. It's also good against like random decks like Branded. Now that's picking up, so you can actually out the Mirror Jade if you don't have the... It's just another Dweller, except it's also spot removal. This could also be the Agnister Dragon for the Metaltronus, but we are running the Aggregator, which is another Metaltronus target. Obviously, we also can send it off of Ext as a board breaker. It's a great card. And then one Chaos Angel, because we are running the Bestials, and we can Talon's take theoretically. I think this card's just so broken in the mirror that you kind of have to run it, because if you can sit on this, this buys you like 5 turns, essentially. It's really crazy. And then one Haggard to clear like Nib tokens, and then your Bestials and stuff like that, and draw cards. So I really do think this is kind of mandatory in this build, especially when you open up the it works with the Mitsurugi cards pretty well. We aren't running the Reptilian Echidna because I think that card's a low cope. And then for the side deck, we are going to be doing my little spice here, Anti-Spell Fragrance plus 2 Lightning Storms. So this is why I'm running over like a Perulia. I think Perulia is kind of not great right now. It's not great into Maliss. It's not great into Blue Eyes. And it's only good into Ryzeal. But Meowless is just fine into most of the Ryzeal variants. So I do think that... I'm not going to be trying to side 9 cards either with my side patterns, so I think this is just fine to have like a broken going first card. You can turn this off with your own ice or your node. You can send this to the graveyard. You could also aggregator your own anti-spell, which is kind of crazy. So this card's actually incredible with any Ryzeal deck. I think any Ryzeal deck should honestly be running this card. Yes, you still need your spells, but you only like, if you even if you get like hand trapped and end on like a duo drive or something and then set this, you can just like play the cross and then just outgrind them essentially on the next turn. And this just like turn skips most decks right now, including Blue Eyes, Maliss. The only thing this isn't great against is Ryzeal, but I still like side this in against Ryzeal, because if I'm able to put the like this plus a board, like that's just game every single time. So this is just like one of those cards that you can like get off a Pot of Prosperity and just like win the game off of it, or just like draw off your cross. And then 2 Lightning Storm. This card's just insane against Blue Eyes right now. You should be running this for Blue Eyes specifically. You need it to pop their back row. They have nothing to deal with this, essentially. You just pop 5 back row with this card. And maybe even 6 with their field spell, so I think you kind of need this. Also, it's just a great removal against, like, Maliss or something. So this card's just great into basically every deck right now. And then 3 Ulti Slayers. This is going to be, you send the Aggregator or something like that, and then you basically win the mirror match. This is great against any of the Ryzeal variants. You send away the Detonator. It's just great. But then also for the mirror match, we're running 3 Metaltronus. This is a new addition, but honestly, I don't know why I wasn't running it before. It's just incredible because you have so many targets, and this is also why we're running the Chaos Angel, because this is where your Chaos Angel outs, but then also a Detonator out, and more importantly, it's going to be your Abyss Dweller out. So you always just need like a quick play out to Abyss Dweller, and it just works for other cards that like you lose, your deck loses to. So I think Metaltronus is like the best option. Like this is better than Droplet, this is better than Forbidden Chalice. Like this is just like the only option. This is better than Xyz Encore too in this deck, because at least it gives you a body that you can link off for Haggard Lizardo, so it's pretty good in that respect. Definitely would be running that. And like I said, Ulti Slayer is just like crazy, honestly. Like this is something I saw a lot of people drop at Orlando, and I think it needs to be in people's side decks. It's still great. And then for the rest of the side deck, 3 Meowls, because this is a great top deck going second, so this card's just incredible. You top deck this against the Fiendsmith variant, any of the Fiendsmith variants, you still draw cards, and going second against this, if you open it, it's just great against the Fiendsmith deck. And then especially Maliss, this is mainly there for Maliss with the 3 Lancia. If you see these cards against Maliss, you just auto-win the game. And Maliss is one of your worst matchups in the Mitsurugi deck. I've heard some people say that, but I think that Murakami actually puts down a lot of pressure on that deck. But the Meowls is still what you need, and it's just great against, like I said, the Fiendsmith deck, also the Mitsurugi Mirror Match, and then other just random decks. It's just great against. It's also fine against Blue Eyes, because you will summon... you will draw 2 from Blue Eyes, so it's just like fine against them if you need something. Alrighty guys, I'm going to show you guys the best 2 1-card combos with Mitsurugi. The first one will be Ext Ryzeal, and then the other one will be with Ice. So we go Ext Ryzeal effect, We are going to want to send the Ryzeal Duo driver here to play around Nibiru, and then go Ext Ryzeal effect to then search out a sword. And then we can special summon out the sword that we just searched and use its effect to search out an ice. Here we are going to have to overlay these two and then get a King of the Feral Imps. You have to go King of the Feral Imps first if you're on the 1-card combo. If you have 2 cards, you can go into the Ryzeal combo first and force in like stop cross first. So we'll go Feral Imps, search out the Saji. This is very important because you have to be able to normal summon Saji then and go Saji effect to then search out a Mitsurugi Prayers, which will allow us to, or sorry, Mitsurugi Ritual. And then we are going to be able to overlay the Saji plus the Feral Imps by detaching the X and then go into an Eclipse Twins. And then here we can go into Ice Ryzeal by sending the Eclipse Twins to the graveyard. And then we can use Eclipse Twins effect to target the King of the Feral Imps plus the Duo Drive and attach one to each other. And then I'll attach the Duo Drive to Feral Imps, and then I'll go Feral Imps effect once again because it's not a hard once per turn to search out the Murakamo. So then we can go Mitsurugi Ritual to summon from hand the Murakamo that we just searched by sending to the graveyard. By sending to the graveyard, we're going to do something interesting here and sending the Futsu to the graveyard. And now we can go Chainlink 1 Futsu when it's tributed to then use its effect to then get us any Mitsurugi card. We are going to get a Mitsurugi Prayers here. We can then go Mitsurugi Prayers to tribute off the Murakamo. And then you will search out a Saji for follow-up. And then you can revive the Saji in your graveyard. And then on resolution, you can then go Murakamo effect to revive itself and search out any Mitsurugi spell or trap card. So here we can search out the Mitsurugi Purification, which is the Omni Negate, and then put the Murakamo into the and then special summon out the Murakamo. And now you've established an Omni Negate before Duo Drive with a hand rip, so that if they imperm your Duo Drive, they go -1. So we can now overlay the Ice and the Saji in order to go into the Duo Drive, and then we can go Duo Drive effect on summon to attach the Duo Drive in our graveyard, and then we can go Duo Drive effect to then detach to and then search out Ryzeal Cross and the Ryzeal node so that we're able to keep playing the game. Then we activate the cross so we can check for nib or any hand traps, and then we can go special summon out the Ryzeal node and then send to the graveyard the King of the Feral Imps to then revive out a Sword Ryzeal, and then we can overlay the sword in the node in order to go into the Ryzeal Detonator, and then Detonator on summon will be able to attach the twins of the Eclipse so that you can end up getting some more pops and, you know, just protection on your Ryzeal Detonator. And then we can set the Mitsurugi Purification after we use the Ryzeal Cross effect to then spin back our Duo Drive and Ext in the graveyard so that we can end up getting a draw, and hopefully it's a hand trap or just even follow-up. And here you've established 5 pops with Detonator, or 4 pops with Detonator, plus a negate with the cross because the Duo Drive, plus 2 hand rips off of the Mitsurugi Murakamo, and then you also have the Great Purification to then Omni negate your opponent, and then also has a great graveyard effect. So this is all off of 1 card, so you should have 5 other cards in hand, or yeah, 5 other cards in hand because you did just draw a card. So that's why the 1 card Ice Ext is very powerful. You could, like I mentioned before, you can lead with Duo Drive instead of Feral Imps if you have 2 extenders, but because this is a 1 card combo, we only had one card starter, so. But it's safer to like start Duo so you can play around Nib a little bit better. All right, so I'm going to show you guys the 1 card Ice combo. Then you go Ice effect on normal summon. Ice effect will then special out the Sword Ryzeal. Sword Ryzeal effect on summon will then search you out the Ext Ryzeal, and then you can overlay your Ext and your Ice and your Sword for the Duo Driver. And then Duo Driver effect you can activate detaching 2, and then you will be able to search out a Node Ryzeal plus an Ice Ryzeal, which is very important. So then you can add those 2 to the hand. You have to skip out cross for this 1 card combo. So now you can special summon out the Ext Ryzeal that you had in your that you searched off, and then you can send, doesn't really matter here, but you can send the Eclipse Twins. And then what you can do here is just go special summon, and then you can go Ext Ryzeal effect to then get out your 2nd sword, which is very important here. Then you can special summon out the 2nd sword, and then you can overlay these 2 for the oh so important King of the Feral Imps. And then King of the Feral Imps will be able to use its effect detaching the sword. You always want to detach your fire attribute monsters first so they can't be bestialed as easily. for what it's worth. And then you can search out the Saji. Very important. And then here you can just overlay these two guys for the Eclipse Twin, since these are two rank 4s. And then you can go Sword Ryzeal special summon, sending then the Eclipse Twin to the graveyard to then target your sword in the graveyard, so it can't be bestialed, revive it, and then the Eclipse Twin will trigger in the graveyard since you have two rank 4s, and then you will target the King of the Feral Imps, attaching probably just the Duo Drive, and then summon it, and then you can go King of the Feral Imps effect to then detach and then search out a Mitsurugi Murakamo. And then here, this is very important. You have to special summon the ice by sending the Saji to the graveyard, and then you can overlay two of your rank 4s in order to go into the Dugaris. And Dugaris will be able to use its obscure effect to detach 2 and then revive 1 from graveyard. So then you can revive out the Saji, special summon out Saji, and then go Saji effect on summon to search out a Mitsurugi spell or trap card. And here we could just search out the nice old QCR Mitsurugi Ritual. And then you can go Mitsurugi Ritual to then summon out the Murakamo from hand by sending to the graveyard a Saji plus a Kusanagi. And then you can summon out the Murakami. Once the Kusanagi goes to the graveyard, you'll get the Ritual back to hand by targeting it. And then you can overlay your Saji plus your Ice. And then you can get a Abyss Dweller. I personally think this is the best generic rank 4 to make. You usually just can't end on a detonator with this, but this is totally fine because I'm going to show you guys a nice little trick. But then we can use the Mitsurugi Ritual to then tribute the Murakamo to then summon out the Futsu. And then this will then trigger the Murakamo in the graveyard to then summon itself and search out a Mitsurugi card. At this point, we're going to search out the very powerful Mitsurugi Great Purification, which is their Omni Negate, and then also revive it. So off of 1 ice, no discards, this is what you're getting, guys. You're going to be able to get an Omni Negate, and then also, if you weren't like me and you sent the Eclipse Twins earlier, you could also just end on a second Eclipse Twins right here, which is always, in my opinion, this is a good end board piece because it's a wall. Your opponent has to get rid of it, or it's going to loop the Dweller or the Dugaris or just like the King of the Feral Imp in your graveyard, so that, or just like the Duo Drive, like for that instance, so that you get to reuse it on your return. And then you get your Omni Negate plus the Hand Rip for 2 and the Board Wipe plus Dweller, and that's off of 1 ice. A lot of people will end up just like not knowing the side patterns exactly, but I think overall with Mitsurugi, you kind of want to end up siding out, some of your bricks going second, like Mitsurugi Great Purification can go out. Cross can stay in or go out depending, but usually stays in my opinion. I usually end up just siding out the bodies going second more than anything. You can just side out most of the Mitsurugi stuff going second because you don't want to end up like losing too hard to Dweller. So I'd like side out 2 Ritual. You could side out even a Kusanagi, obviously, in my opinion. And then you could side out like a quick play because you don't need to see all the quick plays, and that's like 5 sides immediately. And then if you need to, you could always side out like a sword and an ice, in my opinion. 1 Talents going second because Talents isn't the best going second in this deck. Like I said, cross depending on the matchup, but this is a good grind game piece, so I'd personally keep it in going second. And then going first for anything like, let's just say the Anti-Spell Fragrance or something like that, we could just side out like literally just like, I mean, Called By isn't great going second, or going first, but I don't think that we need something like necessarily like a Droll or like an Imperm. We could just side out very easily for anything like going first. Also, Metaltronus is a good going first, like Solemn Strike in the mirror match. So for things like that, you could just like side out. I think like Imperm, or just like if the Bestials aren't that strong, like if it's a pure mirror, just side out the Bestials. So yeah. And then for things like Maliss, you just side in 3 Meowls, 3 Lancia. You could side in the Metaltronuses too, because you can use this to send Aggregator too. Lightning Storm's really good against that deck, in my opinion, to force their back row. Ulti Slayer I don't typically side in, so there's like 10 sides that you can, or 11 sides you can side in against Maliss. If you're going against the mirror match, I think that things like Metaltronus just go way too hard. Meowls is also quite good, so like the Mitsurugi mirror match and the Fiendsmith mirror match, but not so much the pure I'd side those in. Lightning Storm is not great in my opinion. Ulti Slayer is great though in the mirror still. In any mirror, these are the first cards going in because it solves the detonator issue. But also, any mirror will also get that Meltrona, so it's just dependent. Also, if you have Perulia, you could sign the Perulias in the mirror. And then things like Blue Eyes, Blue Eyes, Blue Eyes. We definitely do 2 Lightning Storm. Also, Metaltronus works against some of their monster. Also, Meowls is okay. Ultimate Slayer is okay, but I necessarily wouldn't really do those. Also, like I said, if you run the Light Dragon Agnister, you could also use that for a target. So I want to talk about the matchups for Mitsurugi. How does that look up? So Mitsurugi, I think you have a really good time into a lot of boards because of Murakamo. This thing is just a board breaker and a half. So I think in the mirror match, you actually have a lot of things to play around the most common hand traps. You have prayers to help you play around things like Perulia, which typically slams the mirror match. Also Fuwalos, and if you end up getting Fuwalos, like you can go into Murakamo, and then by tributing out the Futsu, if you have it in hand, and then you can search the Purification so that you only give 1 draw and you still have the hand rip plus board wipe with the Omni Negate, which is one of the better parts, I think, in the mirror match. I also think that you just have more engine to push through things, but you know, you end up losing to things such as Abyss Dweller a little bit harder, so I do think your deck has to be prepared for that with your non-engine, whether it's like with Imperms, Droplets, Xyz Encores on the side with Metaltronus, I think really does help this deck. So really with the games 2 and 3, I think the matchups are typically just fine with this deck. For the most part, it's really just, if you draw playable, you're going to be able to play into most boards, even the Abyss Dweller boards. However, if you don't draw playable, you're going to have a really hard time. And that's how it is with most Yu-Gi-Oh decks, but this deck has a few more bricks than others, like with these 3 cards essentially being in your main deck. And this is technically a brick if you just don't see any other engine pieces, right? So that's how they all kind of are, since they're all kind of 2-card combos, but it makes the engine so strong. Like, this is great against Maliss. Like, I think a lot of people say Mitsurugi has a bad Maliss matchup, which I actually beg to differ. I think that you can play through multiple hand traps. You can play through Shifter really well. Shifter doesn't really affect your deck whatsoever because all your monsters can still tribute and trigger under Shifter. So I think that having an in-engine board wipe is super broken against Maliss. Even if you have just a Murakamo plus like a Purification against them, or just like even a Prayers Barrier, like you can use the Prayers, negate, and then you can, or sorry, the Purification, negate, you know, basically their first action. Then if they establish 2 bodies to go into a link, then you can revive with Prayers, go Murakamo, blow up 2 to 3 bodies, and then they're probably out of steam by then. And that's just with the Mitsurugi cards. That's not even like counting the Ryzeal card. So I think like going first, this deck has an extraordinarily easy time against Maliss. You do have things like Baguska too that you could run like for fun in the mirror match. You also have Chaos Angel, which helps the mirror match. I think these 2 cards are great against Ryzeal, which really does help. I also do think that Emerald can help the grind games out too sometimes when you aren't running things like Double Cross. You just need to have something to help recur stuff. So I think in general, your matchups are pretty good. And then also I think Blue Eyes you can struggle a little bit into because you don't have spell and trap card destruction really. So that's why you can run things like Tornado Dragon, then also prioritize Exiton. But I think overall games 2 and 3, you really have to be focusing on side decking things like Lightning Storm and Board Breakers to really help against the spells and traps, because that's where this deck can get really slowed down. If you are getting hand trapped with like double Imperm set, like you're never getting through that board. So I think that's why going second versus Blue Eyes game 1, you're probably losing unless you are able to hand trap them. And that's always just like the important thing with these matchups. Like that's why I think Mitsurugi, you need to run hand traps. You can run the Board Breakers, but you'll just lose the Maliss matchup. And that's one of the most popular decks. So I'm not like running a deck build that auto loses to Maliss. So just know where to hand trap. Like I think the Veilers are the weakest ones, but I do think that Droll is very good in the stack, and then Nib is very good. Ghost Ogre, I would also be running for the Blue Eyes matchup as long as people are running Blue Eyes. Once people stop running Blue Eyes as much because they realize they can't go second, Ghost Ogre can probably come out, but obviously then Infinite Imperm for the Dweller and stuff like that. And then Fuwalos is great also for the mirror. But like I said, you have like the best Fuwalos lines, I think, out of all the the Ryzeal variants, which is like one of the better reasons to run this variant, because you know, every Ryzeal variant is maining like Mulcharmies, so like having a variant that doesn't really care about Mulcharmies is very good in my opinion. So yeah, guys, if you want to see more videos like this, we went really in depth with Mitsurugi here. Talked about matchups. We went into combos, we went to side patterns, and then we went into the deck. If you guys want to see some gameplay too, if you guys want to see an extended full Ryzeal guide, so this is going to be about Mitsurugi, Pure, and Fiendsmith, like full. We will get into that. Get this video to 500 likes, and we will get that. And comment down below what your favorite part about this deck profile was. And we're going to close out this video with some gameplay probably. So, yeah, guys, I'll be seeing you guys later. Have a good one. MyGamesGX signing out. Leave a comment down below. Subscribe. Road to 10K subscribers. Check out my website, mygamesgx.com, if you want to pick up the Ryzeal spreadsheet. That also has branded combos and all that fun stuff. We will be seeing you guys later. Bye now.